this countdown, we have the lifeguards. So I came across this TikTok and apparently he used to be a lifeguard at Disney.
This is what Disney throws in the water to test their lifeguards. But what they don't tell you is that the lifeguards are told that they have to be constantly watching the water as if somebody's purposely trying to drown their child, because people apparently do that. Disney noticed that people would go there to drown their children on purpose so that they could sue Disney and they could get rid of their child at the same time. So Disney lifeguards are trained to look for that.
That is absolutely horrifying if he's telling the truth. It must be super stressful being a lifeguard at Disney. Like, their water parks and wave pools are always packed. It's so sad if that has actually happened. In our 9th spot, we have the deaths. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up. You know the drill, because it really helps us out. Also, if you haven't already, go check out the other parts of the series. So Disney is very, very protective of its image. It wants to maintain that it's a safe and family-friendly place. So they claim that no one has ever died at their park, which is clearly false. Tons of accidents have happened at Disney World and Disneyland. Both visitors and workers have lost their lives at Disney. But their claim is 100% true. Now, you're probably thinking, how is this possible? So it turns out what Disney does is when someone does die at the park, employees have to remove the body from the property before pronouncing them dead. That means no one technically died at the park, only outside of the park's gates. They do this all so that families feel safe coming there, because if no one dies there, then clearly it's super safe. But still, this is pretty sketchy if you ask me. In our 8th spot, we have the injuries. Now, if you work for Disney as one of the characters and you get injured on the job, well, guess what? You can't receive medical assistance until you're out of the public's eye. This is just another crazy rule that Disney has. You have to stay in character no matter what. They all do this to preserve the illusion of Disney and magic. I mean, how horrifying would it be if all of a sudden Mickey rips off his head and starts like gushing blood in front of kids? Now, one worker was told before accepting a job as Water Goofy on a Disney cruise, he had to agree that if for some reason he started drowning, he had to be carried away before lifeguards could remove his costume and perform CPR. So he could literally be dying in the costume and need medical attention right away, but Disney won't allow that. Moving on to number 7, we have the repairs. Ever notice how Disney is pretty much always in great condition? I mean, some of the rides are super old, but they don't look it. Well, according to a former Disney employee, every night workers go around the park touching up any and everything. During the day, the workers note if there's any graffiti anywhere in the park or if there's paint chipping anywhere. They write it down and let the night shift workers know, and then they go around fixing it all. I mean, I just took in that I've never seen graffiti at Disney, and that's exactly why. But also, it's a very tedious job. They have to go around the full park and get it all done before the park reopens in the morning. Moving on to number 6, we have the fire accident. So this next story comes from a Disney employee that worked as an outdoor vendor. One night while watching a fireworks show, Tinkerbell got stuck on the wire above the castle since she had been hoisted up because she was flying in the air. But her wire was stuck, and she almost burned to death up there. There was a whole Indiana Jones portion of the show, and in it they had large fireballs. Well, they couldn't stop the show to get Tinkerbell down, so they kind of just left her there and turned off her spotlight so no one could see what was going on, and then they prayed for the best. But like I said before, it's a risk you take while working for Disney. You know, you could be dying and they're not gonna save your life if it interferes with their show. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the cursed ride. Believe it or not, but there is a ride at Disney that all workers believe is cursed. This is the Matterhorn. First off, this ride is responsible for the most fatal and non-fatal incidents. In 1964, a teen on the ride stood up in the bobsled and then died after being thrown out from the ride. Then another time, the ride caught on fire, injuring a family in their sled. And another visitor died after she was launched out of her seat and then hit by another bobsled. More on this later. You think they would have fixed this ride after the first couple of deaths, but no, they blame it on a curse instead. They should just kind of look into the safety of that ride, because I don't know if it's that safe. In our 4th spot, we have the death on Space Mountain. Okay, this one is pretty dark. So in 1979, a woman died on the Space Mountain ride. She was only 31 at the time. So basically, after the ride was done, this woman didn't feel well at all, but she couldn't get out of her seat by herself. The ride operators were trying to get her out of her seat, but the other workers weren't notified, so they ended up sending her on the ride again. This time, when the ride was done, she was completely unconscious. It literally put her in a coma. She passed away a week later. Now, technically, this wasn't Disney's fault. I mean, part of it was. They had a lawsuit filed against them, but it was dismissed because apparently, while on the ride, a tumor dislodged from her heart and then traveled to her brain. Yeah, I know, that's super scary. In our third spot, we have the ghost of Walt Disney. So for those of you who don't know, Disney had a secret apartment. It was located just above the firehouse on Main Street, USA. This apartment was built so that he could watch the guests enjoy his creation without being overwhelmed by the crowds. Now, his apartment was so secretive that him and his family and special guests were the only ones allowed in there. In fact, photographers were rarely allowed inside. As a result, there are hardly any photos of Mr. Disney and his family in this place. Well, after the passing of Walt Disney in 1966, cast members decide to place a small lamp at the window. They keep the light on to symbolize that Disney's spirit is still alive at Disneyland. And this may be indeed true, because it's said that his ghost still haunts his apartment. A number of employees have seen Disney while cleaning the apartment. Apparently one worker was in there and then the lights started flickering on and off. Another worker said she heard a voice say, "Don't forget, I am still here." And that's when she probably quit, because that's terrifying. In our second spot, we have Dolly's Dip. So in 1984, Regina, otherwise known as Dolly Young, was riding on the Matterhorn when her seatbelt came undone. She was then thrown from the ride and hit and killed by another bobsled. Now, there's still much debate as to how her seatbelt came undone. Some say that she unbuckled it to help her children who were in another car. Others think that the seatbelt just wasn't buckled properly in the first place. Either way, this accident was super tragic. But that's not all. Now Disney employees claim that Dolly's spirit haunts the ride. The area in which she died is now called Dolly's Dip, and employees hate going there by themselves. Those that do have claimed to feel like someone is watching them. Others say that the lights in Dolly's Dip never work properly anymore. Now, everyone kind of just avoids that area at all costs. And in our number one spot, we have the tragic accident. So this story was shared on Reddit by a man who once worked at Disney as a VIP tour guide. So he was in the city hall when two women came in with two little girls. One of the girls was in a wheelchair, the other girl looked very depressed. Both of them had cuts and bruises all over them. The two women with them were nurses from the hospital that the girls had just been to. They were there to ask for a refund for the girls' tickets. Now, here's where the story gets very sad. So apparently the girls had been with their mom and dad at Epcot, but on their way home they got in a really bad car accident. They both lost their parents in the crash. So the nurses had come to try and get a refund for the tickets so that the girls could get money to try and go home. Now, how dark is that? That's extremely sad. Starting off this countdown, we have the secret tunnel system. I know I've talked about this before, but Walt Disney created a whole underground tunnel system for the characters to have a break. And it's for them to secretly get around the park without walking everywhere in costume. This way, this all preserves the magical feel of Disney. But some employees shared what really goes on down there. First off, they said that the tunnel system is fairly confusing, and on a number of occasions, people have gotten lost down there. One employee said that they had just got a job playing a Disney mascot character and went down into the tunnels and had no clue where to go. He went to ask other employees for help, but since he was new, they kind of just brushed him off. Another employee revealed that some of the cast members like to get it on during their breaks down in the tunnel system. So while you're up above having fun, they're down below having fun. Just in a different way, if you understand what I'm getting at. Coming in at number 9, we have the waiting lines. But before I go any further, if you guys are liking this video so far, make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps us out. I think the one flaw about Disney are its lines. Seriously, nobody's got time for that. But a couple of years ago, a huge scandal broke out involving Disney and their waiting lines. Basically, rich families were paying tour guides that have access to these special passes for the disabled. Basically, with this pass, you get brought right to the top of the line, because Disney wants guests with disabilities to have a great time. But wealthy, able people were abusing this, which is absolutely sickening. Can't believe people were actually doing this just to scam the system. Moving on at number 8, we have the overnighter. For this next point, let's move back along to Disney's tunnel system. So remember I talked about how new employees often get lost down in the tunnels? Well, there's this creepy urban legend about this happening to a new employee. So he finished his shift and went down to the tunnels to change. As he was making his way out, the lights in the tunnel shut off, and he was in the complete darkness. Now, he had trouble already finding the exit with the lights on. Now with the lights off, it was even more difficult. He ended up wandering around the tunnel system for hours before collapsing from exhaustion. He ended up staying there overnight. His coworkers found him in the morning. He was freezing cold and super scared. So now this story is kind of used to scare new employees. In our 7th spot, we have the suspicious death. So in 2012, a man's body was found near the Mickey and Friends parking structure at Disneyland. Police just assumed the man took his own life, but no witnesses ever reported seeing this man jump. Now what's weird is that I tried to search more into this case, but I couldn't find anything. We don't know what truly happened to this man and how he passed away, which is a little suspicious to me. In our 6th spot, we have Yes Man. So this story was shared by a former Disney employee that worked near the Indiana Jones ride. So his job was to dress up as an adventurer and just stand around. But he said he was often attacked by kids, and Disney told him that he just kind of had to take it. So these kids would often be super psyched to go on this ride, and so they were in costume and had plastic weapons. He said on a number of occasions, kids would come up to him and literally whip him with their weapons. Or he would get asked to duel, and he always had to say yes. So kids would just be jabbing him with their plastic swords. Yeah, that's not a job I would like. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Winnie the Pooh gets sued. I thought that was so clever. Like, I was typing that and I came up with that and I'm like, pat on the back. Good job, Lindsay. Anyway, in 1978, a guest at the park sued Disney and a cast member, claiming that the cast member playing Winnie the Pooh slapped their daughter. In 1981, their case was brought to court, and the cast member showed up in the Winnie the Pooh costume. He argued that their daughter was tugging on his costume, he turned around and accidentally knocked her over. And then in court, he proceeded to show the jury his costume's arms, saying it's not even physically possible for him to do that in the first place, you know, with his little limited movement. In the end, Disney ended up winning, but still, what a wild day at court. And I love how he showed up in costume. Coming in at number 4, we have the Deadly Ride. On June 26, 2007, a female guest passed away on the Rock and Roller Coaster avec Aerosmith ride at Disneyland Paris. After the ride was done, people noticed her unconscious. The paramedics arrived, but failed to revive her. Sadly, she passed away. Now, in articles, it said that the ride wasn't going to reopen until they found out how and why she passed. But there's no follow-up articles outlining what went wrong on the ride. And it's not like she was 80 years old and had health conditions. No, she was fairly young. I just wish Disney let us know what happened, because the ride has been up and running ever since, but no official statement was ever released. In our 3rd spot, we have Disney's jail. Did you know that Disney has its own specific jail for criminals? Yeah, if you're caught breaking any of Disney's rules, you'll be escorted to Disney jail. Employees describe it as an underground room with bars on the windows. There's no bright colors or Mickeys decorating the area. Now, what causes you to be sent to Disney jail? Well, if you get too rowdy or too intoxicated at the park, if you smoke certain substances at the park, or if you're caught shoplifting. You get the picture. Disney is actually very strict when it comes to this. People caught shoplifting aren't even given a warning sometimes. Instead, they're just sent straight to their jail. From there, you can be fined, kicked out of the park, banned from ever coming back to the park, or all of the above. In our second spot, we have Blake Lively's arrest. Believe it or not, but actress Blake Lively was once sent to Disney jail. Yeah, so basically her and her brother both snuck into Disneyland's park. What they did is put hairspray on the stamps of somebody that came out of the park and then put their hands together, and that transferred the stamp. Then they got to go in the park for free. Except Blake and her brother were caught by an undercover Disney cop and sent to Disney jail. I'm telling you, Disney has way too many undercover cops. Like, they're everywhere, which is a good thing for safety, but also kind of a bad thing because, you know, they're watching your every move. And in our number one spot, we have The Battle. This story comes from a Disney employee that worked at a store at the Disney park near the Indiana Jones ride. One time, 30 kids ran into the store and each grabbed a toy sword from the bin, you know, so that they could be just like Indiana Jones. But then the kids started attacking the two workers in the store with their swords. And obviously the workers aren't allowed to like yell at the kids or panic or fight back, so they just let the kids attack them until their parents noticed and called them off. By then, he says his arms were already covered in cuts and bruises and he was bleeding. Yeah, maybe those weapons should be like placed behind the counter or something, you know, so things like that don't happen. Or maybe Disney should just have a better policy, I don't know. Off this countdown, we have The Boy in the Haunted Mansion. According to a number of Disney employees, there's a young boy that haunts the Haunted Mansion ride at Disneyland in California. So legend goes that this little boy was once caught spreading his mom's ashes in this ride. As we all know by now from the other videos I've done on Disney on this channel, this is fairly common. A number of people bring their deceased loved ones' ashes and sprinkle them all over the park. This happened so often that Disney had to ban it and put protocols in place for it. Anyways, ever since then, the boy has been seen on this ride crying for his mother. He also has been spotted on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride as well. So what happened? Did the boy lose his mom at Disneyland? Who knows? But I think it's pretty freaky. Coming in at number 9, we have The Boy in the Haunted Mansion ride ×2. So not only is the Haunted Mansion ride at Disneyland haunted, but the Disney World in Florida is haunted as well. And again, by another little boy. According to a number of employees, they have seen this ghostly little boy riding the ride. In fact, they caught him on camera. So a worker there was taking photos of the ride for the Walt Disney World virtual visit. Upon reviewing the photos, she saw a ghostly little child peeking its head out. Keep in mind, there were no children around when this photo was taken. That is absolutely horrifying. Just looking at that photo gives me the creeps. Moving on to number 8, we have Mr. One Way. Mr. One Way is the name given to the ghost that haunts the Space Mountain ride at Disneyland, California. Mr. One Way is apparently this tall, lumberjack-looking ghost with red hair and a red face. One legend states that this ghost will hang out in the queue for Space Mountain and just stand there silently. Whereas another version says that he actually will get on the ride only with a single rider, but then disappear before the ride ever finishes. One worker claims that they actually got proof of Mr. One Way on camera. Surveillance footage shows a ghostly figure in an empty seat as the ride takes off. And according to the man beside the empty seat, he was talking to a man 5 minutes prior to the ride. At the end of the ride, the man was gone. So he was concerned and talked to a Disney employee, and they said that there never was a man beside him. And then they told him the story of Mr. One Way. And then looking at the footage, they saw the creepy outline of Mr. One Way. No thanks. I'm never going on that ride ever again. Coming in at number 7 today, we have Disco Debbie. This is another ghost that haunts the Space Mountain ride. Like, out of all the rides, why haunt that one? I don't know. Anyways, this ghost has been named Disco Debbie. Apparently, she's the spirit of a cast member that passed away on this ride. You know it's Debbie you're seeing because she gives off a green glow. I guess that's why they named her Disco Debbie, because she's like shining like a disco ball. I don't know. Anyways, apparently a number of guests have seen this woman through the old window that showed the Starfield in the indoor waiting area. Of course, they just thought she was part of the ride, but no, she's not. In our 6th spot today, we have the Monorail Runner. In June of 1966, a teenager named Thomas Guy Cleveland attempted to sneak into Disneyland for an event. I talked about this case in part 3, so if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. But basically, he climbed the fence and was going to get into the park by running along the monorail track. In the end, he was sadly struck and killed by an oncoming train. According to several monorail drivers, the ghost of Thomas can still be seen to this day. On a number of occasions, they have seen his ghostly apparition running along the tracks. Dude, why are there so many ghosts at Disney? Like seriously, it's the last place you think would be haunted. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Tom Sawyer's Island. In June of 1973, two brothers decided to stay on Tom Sawyer's Island after closing. After a while of being on the island alone, they decided to head back. But in order to do so, they would have to swim across the rivers of America. They attempted this, but sadly they both drowned. And now, apparently at night, you can see the ghosts of these two boys splashing around in the water. A number of cast members have reported these sightings thinking that someone was actually drowning, only for the brothers to disappear before their eyes. And I thought crocodiles were the only thing we had to fear in the waters at Disney, but obviously not. In our 4th spot today, we have the People Mover Ghost. The People Mover ride was a transport attraction that was up and running at Tomorrowland in Disneyland, California until 1995. Only a month after it opened in 1967, a guest tripped and fell onto the tracks and was hit by an oncoming train and sadly killed. Apparently now the ghost of this guy haunts Tomorrowland, and he likes to torment the guests, but not everyone. Only teens with blonde hair. I guess that's his type. A number of people have had this ghostly boy pull at their blonde hair. So all my blonde babes out there, you better watch out. In our 3rd spot today, we have The Ladies. The Ladies is the name given to a group of white-haired ladies that haunt the grounds of Disney. We don't know who they are or why they haunt Disney, but they do. They say that when these ladies appear, a sense of dread can be felt by whoever sees them. So far, they haven't done anything sinister, but we don't know what they want with the park. Also, they show up periodically. They may be there for one day and then not show themselves until several years later. Maybe they're just a friendly group of old ladies that love Disney and still want to visit the park from beyond the grave. Let's hope it's that, and that they're not seeking revenge on Disney and the park goers. Hey, maybe they're Walt Disney's friends and they just meet up with him every year for a cup of tea. Who knows? In our 2nd spot today, we have the Woman in White. The Woman in White is the name given to a lady often wearing a 19th century white gown. She apparently haunts Main Street at Disneyland. But we for sure know that this lady is a nice ghost. Legend goes that on a number of occasions she has guided lost children to the Disneyland Baby Care Center, where they were then reunited with their parents. Reunited and it feels so good. Sorry. So if you do happen to run into this ghost, don't worry. Apparently she's nice. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Heart Attack. Did you know that the Haunted Mansion ride used to be so scary that it gave someone a heart attack? According to a number of Disney workers, they have heard this creepy legend surrounding the Haunted Mansion ride. Legend goes that before the ride was open to the public, they had some people go on the ride and test it out. Well, one woman was so scared that she had a heart attack and died while on the ride. As a result, the ride went under construction for several more years before finally opening in 1969. So apart from the fake ghosts that the ride has, there are also a number of real ghosts that haunt this ride, like this poor woman.
Number 10, virus outbreak. Now, I know what you're thinking, duh, they caught that virus in 2020, but no, I'm talking about a different one. At Disneyland, between December 17th and December 20th, 2014, visitors to the park were exposed to measles, resulting in an outbreak that affected the residents of 8 US states as well as Mexico and Canada. The California Department of Public Health was first notified of a suspected measles case on January 5th, 2015, and by February 11th, 2015, at least 39 individuals who had visited at least one of the 2 adjacent Disney parks during the exposure period had become ill. In addition to this likely direct exposure, secondary and unknown transmissions were numerous, resulting in at least 125 cases within the United States by February 11th, 2015. The specific outbreak was declared over in the US in mid-April 2015 after 42 days with no traceable transmissions and 147 having been affected within the United States. This measles outbreak, though, resulted in no known deaths. Number 9. Ashes spread. There's a very popular urban legend that Disney World is full of scattered human remains. world is full of scattered human ashes, particularly in certain parts of the park such as the Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, and It's a Small World. It's been proven that guests frequently release human ashes within the Disney parks, and Disney understands that this could be a cathartic process for those grieving, but it's important to realize that this violates Disney's rules and also local laws about scattering remains. Disney has specifically spoken out, telling the Wall Street Journal that this type of behavior is strictly prohibited and unlawful. Not only is this against the park policy, but any guests spreading ashes will be escorted off the property. This is taken very seriously and is referred to by cast members as a HEPA cleanup incident, since it requires a special cleaning protocol to remove the ash residue. When guests do succeed in scattering ashes on attractions, there are a lot of repercussions. Not only could they be banned from future entry, but it's also disruptive to others enjoying the park. These attractions and areas need to be shut down for technical difficulties, and it delays other people's experiences. It's said that this happens at least once a month. Number 8. Leaving a guest paralyzed. In 1983, James Higgins, who was 18 at the time, fell off Space Mountain at Disneyland and was paralyzed from the waist down, and he suffered from brain damage. He tumbled out of a speeding car and was found unconscious under the tracks of Space Mountain. He tried suing Disney and asked for more than $7 million in damages and compensation. His attorneys claimed that the restraining lap bar used on the high-speed roller coaster type ride at the time of the incident was improperly designed and could have allowed a rider to remove it. During the trial, the jury was taken to the park to ride Space Mountain, and several of the ride's cars were brought into the courtroom to demonstrate their use. A physicist called by Disneyland attorneys said that the lap bar appeared to be defective, but added that gravity probably would have kept the rider from falling out if he followed park instructions. Park attorneys said that James was intoxicated at the time of the incident and trying to show off for friends when he tumbled off the ride. In the end, the jury found Disneyland was not liable for his injuries. Number 7. Harassment of workers. It seems like wherever you work in the customer service industry, you are bound to deal with customers who go too far. Unfortunately, Disney is no exception, and it happens more particularly to female employees who are dressed up as face characters, like those who walk around dressed as a Disney princess. A lot of them have experienced harassment, and an ex-Disney park employee wrote on Reddit about her experience. She said, "I was a Tinkerbell performer for Walt Disney World about 3 years ago, and I can't count how many times people asked me what was under my dress or tried to touch me inappropriately. I would always shame them to my photo pass attendant, their family, and people in line by, loudly exclaiming, 'You want to know what's under my dress? Well, there's pixie dust, of course.' Or, 'This man is a pirate. He's trying to reach the pixie dust that I keep under my dress.' And then they'd walk away in shame like the creepy people they are." Now, since face characters are never allowed to break character, there isn't much they can do about the harassment, which is pretty scary. Number 6. People taking their own lives. With a place like Disney, it's shocking that there are so many people who go there to end their life. Unfortunately, this has happened many times over the years. The main place for this is at Disneyland in California and is at the Mickey and Friends parking structure. The first account happened in 2010 when a 61-year-old man jumped from the top floor of the parking structure. He left behind a note explaining his personal issues were the reason why he did that. In 2012, a 23-year-old man was found near the northwest corner of the parking structure and was pronounced dead at the scene. It was investigated as if the man had taken his own life at the time, but there were no witnesses. In 2016, a 40-year-old man jumped from the parking structure just after 2 a.m. He was rushed to UC Irvine Medical Center and pronounced dead at 3:08 a.m. And now the most recent death took place in December of 2022, where a 51-year-old elementary school principal jumped from the top floor and was pronounced dead at the scene. These stories are all so sad, and if you ever get these feelings, please know that there are people and resources to help you. Number 5. Fell out of a ride. In September 2000, a guest fell out of the Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin ride in Disneyland and suffered serious internal injuries, cardiac arrest, and brain damage after being dragged underneath the car. The speculated reason for this was a malfunction with the lap bar. It was said by witnesses that the bar on the cart to strap the rider in did not lock in any position, there were no safety straps, and the bar did not go over the rider's lap. Now, according to investigators with Cal/OSHA, the state safety agency, the lap bars in the ride's cars are raised and lowered manually by the Disneyland ride operator and worked independently of each other. Disney said park officials believe that their employees followed all the park procedures, including those for lap bars. The police and the Disney president said that there was no malfunction with the ride to cause this. The guests lived, but there was a serious delay between the time of the incident and when medical emergency personnel were contacted, leading Disney to review and change their policies. Unfortunately, it was too late. The guests lived for 9 more years with the consequences of that fateful ride until they passed away in January 2009. Number 4. Drownings. In June 1973 and in June 1983, guests drowned in the River of America's attraction in Disneyland, both after violating the rules. The first incident involves 2 brothers who stayed in the park after closing. They stayed on Tom Sawyer's Island past closing time by hiding in an area that is off limit to guests. When they wanted to leave the island, they tried to swim across the river, though one of them didn't know how to swim. The older brother attempted to carry his brother on his back and drowned halfway across. His body was found the next morning, while the younger brother was able to stay afloat by dog paddling until a ride operator rescued him. The second incident involved a man drowning by trying to pilot a rubber emergency boat from Tom Sawyer's Island, which he and a friend had stolen from a restricted area of the island during Disneyland's annual grad night. The boat capsized and he drowned. Both individuals were intoxicated at the time of the incident, and the victim's mother sued Disneyland for allowing her inebriated son onto the premises, but the lawsuit was unsuccessful. Number 3. Hit by another car. In 1984, 48-year-old Dolly Young was riding the Matterhorn bobsled in Disneyland when her seatbelt was unfastened. She fell out and plummeted to the track below, only to be hit by another car and get dragged along the rails before the ride was stopped. Due to this, she got decapitated. She was pronounced dead at the scene due to her massive head and chest injuries. Afterwards, an investigation found that her seatbelt was not buckled. It's unclear whether she deliberately unfastened her belt or if the seatbelt had malfunctioned. Since then, the section where she was struck on the Tomorrowland side of the mountain has been known as Dolly's Dip, and park employees claim that she still haunts the ride. Former ride operator named Kristen, who worked at the park from 1989 to 1995, claimed that she could feel a supernatural presence while operating the Matterhorn, and that other staffers told her they had seen a ghost while on the job. She said, "I worked that ride for several years and I never saw her, but I sure did feel her." Number 2. Being crushed. In 1974, an employee named Debbie Stone was crushed to death between a rotating wall and a permanent theater wall in the America Sings attraction in Disneyland. At around 10:30 p.m., when the last show got over and the stages were shifting positions in between the 45-second interval, a guest from the adjacent theater heard a blood-chilling scream. When he and the operators rushed to the scene, they were horrified to see Debbie Stone crushed between the walls of the 2 theaters. To this day, no one knows exactly what went wrong, but there have been numerous theories. Some state that Debbie may have been inclining towards the adjacent stage to talk to a fellow cast member, or she may have attempted to jump from one stage to the other, or she may have been distracted and stepped backwards without noticing. Either way, this death was just tragic. And coming in at number 1 is not caring for disabled guests. Disney is supposed to be a fun place that includes everyone no matter their differences, but it seems like the park didn't take their disabled guests into consideration. In 2009, the ride It's a Small World Holiday in Disneyland broke down while the other guests were evacuated off the ride, while this guest was not, as he was in a wheelchair. The guest was stuck in the ride's goodbye room, the final setting of It's a Small World Holiday, for 30 to 40 minutes before being evacuated. In addition to being wheelchair bound, he also suffered from panic attacks and high blood pressure, and these things were aggravated by the blaring Christmas carols due to them being unable to exit the ride. Rather than calling firefighters to evacuate the guests, Disneyland staffers waited for the ride to be fixed. When the guest was finally able to lead the ride, it took 3 hours to medically stabilize them at a Disneyland first aid station once they were rescued. The guests sued Disney for its inadequate evacuation procedures for disabled guests and for not providing proper warnings for those who could not evacuate during a ride stoppage. In March 2013, a jury awarded the man $8,000 and the safety key was introduced.
Coming in at number 10, we have the leg. This is a worrying anecdote that was shared on a BuzzFeed article about a horrifying day out at Disneyland. Paige M wrote a worrisome entry about nearly being hit by a flying appendage. She wrote, "While riding Everest in Animal Kingdom, I saw an object fly past my head during the drop. When the ride stopped, a man 4 rows ahead of me raised his hand and informed the cast member that his prosthetic leg had somehow fallen off during the ride." Honestly, oh my god, how did that happen? They had to stop the ride and go and find it. Oh my god, that sounds like quite the close call. Honestly, like being hit in the face with a prosthetic would be pretty stressful at the best of times, but on a roller coaster, I mean, anything that hits you at that speed, you could die. Coming in at number 9, we have Ashes to Ashes. This is a popular urban legend that a number of people have spread their loved ones' ashes at Disneyland. Now, rumor has it that the most popular spot to offload ashes is the Haunted Mansion. Maybe it's someone's final wish to take part in the Dance of the Dead or something. Although, to be honest with you, I'm really not sure I'd want to be a real ghost in the mansion. I've literally never ever thought about it until this second, but I suddenly realized that I absolutely need my ashes to be spread outdoors. I just can't be inside forever. I'm an outdoor gal. I actually think I'd be more of a sprinkle me round the exterior of the castle kind of turn to ash person. Wow, this has just got really dark really quickly, which I guess is an occupational hazard of working on this channel these days. Spooky. So anyway, one first-hand eyewitness wrote into People magazine to say, "While riding Pirates of the Caribbean a few years ago, a lady pulled out a bag and dumped the contents into the water. She was crying and sort of laughing at the same time. It soon became clear that she had dumped her husband's ashes in the water as his final resting place. She was caught on camera and did get in trouble, but it couldn't be undone." Both creepy and cool at the same time. Honestly, to me, that is absolutely horrifying, watching someone dump their husband's ashes into water that is right next to me. The worst thing that happened to me on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride was that I lost my sparkly mouse ears, although they did get them back. But yeah, ashes. Christ. But oh wait, there is more scary Pirates of the Caribbean drama up next at number 8. So, you're riding along on the Pirates of the Caribbean, ho ho ho, and a bottle of rum and all of that glorious stuff. As you know, if you've been on the ride, there's a lot of animatronics. There's even an animatronic pirate that looks like Johnny Depp's character, Captain Jack Sparrow. Sure, okay, but you're on the ride and today it looks super real and you're thinking like, is this frontline Disney tech or is it Johnny Depp? Turns out, sometimes, actually, it is the real life pirate, or real life actor. Back in April 2017, he jumped aboard the River Cruise attraction in California and gave fans both a fright and a delight. Depp has since revealed he thought it was actually a bad idea. He said, "I was very excited to stand stock still and then shout out, 'Oi, what you looking at?'" He told Graham Norton this when he went live on his show. He said, "I got no reaction whatsoever. Nothing. I had to start describing the people I was shouting at so they knew that I was real. It was exhausting and such a bad idea." I mean, yeah, I can't imagine that. People thought it was fake Johnny Depp and then it was real Johnny Depp. Here's a clip from the incident so you can see him Jack Sparrowing it up.
I would like to commandeer the ocean. Everyone jump out into the water. No, obviously. Don't do that. I'll just jump in your boat. Hello.
Coming in at number 7, we have the crying boy. Could there be anything more distressing than seeing a lost crying child at Disneyland? The place is supposed to be filled with happy children having their best day. It seems a small crying boy has been spotted near the exit of the Haunted Mansion on multiple occasions by guests and employees. When people have gone over to speak to him and offer him comfort, he's ignored them as if they aren't there. Some even swear he has just vanished into thin air too. I honestly would be really scared. Maybe I would think it would be an extension of the ride, but a crying child, that would be pretty messed up. It seems that actually many people think that the boy is a ghost of a child who had their ashes scattered on the ride. Oh my god, and we're back to those ashes again. Please. Why Disneyland? I get it, but like, very stressful. Okay, so you know at the beginning of this video when I said I loved Space Mountain? Well, nobody told me it was haunted. Coming into number 6, we have the ghost hitcher on Space Mountain. This is the story of Mr. One Way, a man who rides Space Mountain but never gets off. So the legend has it that a red-haired man who died on the ride in the 1970s can still be spotted on the attraction today, and he's looking for company. It is said that he sits up next to single riders, but by the time the ride ends, there's absolutely no sign of him. This has baffled many riders who have sworn that they've been sitting next to someone who seemingly just vanishes from beside them before the ride is over. Can you even imagine? I would think I was seeing things or freaking out, or I don't know, I jolted my head too hard on the ride. It would scare me much harder than the ride's scary drops and the scary moon. For those who don't physically see Mr. One Way, they say that they can feel him behind them or next to them. There have been a number of reports of the Hitcher, and he may or may not have been caught on camera a couple of times. Check this out. Coming into number 5, we have It's a Small World, and I don't think it's okay. I think most scary Disneyland experiences start and end with the It's a Small World ride. The ride is terrifying because, you know, tiny dolls are terrifying, and so are the sounds of children singing, and that really does have both of them. It's a Small World is an OG Disney ride, and there have been many ghost stories and urban legends about its existence. One being that the dolls move of their own accord. Now, one more credible source is author Ridley Pearson, who absolutely swears that he saw the dolls move. He was on a VIP after hours tour, and he's convinced that they have a life of their own. Whether or not that's true, I don't know, but I do know that a man was once awarded $8,000 after being stuck on the ride for over 30 minutes and forced to endure the songs over and over and over again. That actually would send me insane. But I have to say, $8,000 for just 30 minutes. Maybe he saw more than he was supposed to. Are the dolls alive? Let me know what you think. Coming in at number 4, we have The Lamp. Imagine what it's like to work at Disneyland. Guests are always treated to a very front-facing experience. But then, imagine working at Disneyland and knowing and seeing everything that goes on behind the scenes. I bet it's really a whole different experience. One member of the cleaning staff had a truly scary experience shortly after Walt Disney died in the mid-1960s. A bit of backstory: Walt used to have an apartment above the fire station on Main Street, and he frequently stayed there after the park opened in 1955. He just liked to be around. When he was in residence, it is said that he always kept a lamp burning in the window so everyone knew that he was there. I think that's pretty handy. I wish that there was always a light on when my boss was in the building. It would save me a lot of time. When he died though, the lamp was switched off. Eerily, it seems that the lamp would just turn itself back on though. One day a staff member was cleaning the apartment when she heard a voice that said, "I'm still here." From that day on, Disney's lamp keeps on burning in the window as a mark of respect and acknowledgement for his continued presence. I've actually seen that lamp with my own eyes. Coming into number 3, we have Dolly's Dip. In Disneyland, California, it is said that the Matterhorn ride is haunted. Both guests and park employees have felt a presence ever since a woman died on the track in 1984. Dolly Young was said to have unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up in order to assist a child when she was thrown onto the tracks and run over by the next bobsled. It's said that during one point of the ride, named Dolly's Dip, she can actually sometimes be seen, or most often felt. The cold spots that you feel on the ride aren't Disney sticking to the winter alpine theme, it could actually be Dolly. Coming into number 2, we have the dead body of the Haunted Mansion. In July 2016, a dead man was found in Disney's Phantom Manor in Disneyland, Paris. It seems that the corpse belonged to a man who had worked at the park for a whopping 14 years and, sadly, been accidentally electrocuted. The man had been working on lighting just backstage when he died. The ride was stopped immediately and closed down while the body was removed and an investigation into the death began. Honestly, how awful, a haunted house being the scene of an actual death. Finally, coming into number 1, we have the Big Thunder Mountain dramas. Oh dear, there have been 2 horrifying experiences on Big Thunder Mountain, most recently in 2011 when a train derailed in the Paris park. A carriage basically derailed and caused trains to collide with one another, and also in the same year, a piece of the rockwork fell onto the track in front of a train, causing a serious injury. But I have to say the scariest Thunder Mountain experience came in September 2003 in Disneyland, California. This was when a train sped through the faux desert landscape and uphill into a tunnel when the cars became separated and the locomotive derailed, which is absolutely horrifying. Can you imagine being derailed in the dark? Eyewitnesses said riders climbed from the cars and started running away. Some were screaming for help, and one guest heard a man yelling, "Someone is hurt bad. It's really serious. Get someone up here." And it was serious. The man, 22-year-old Marcelo Torres, was actually killed in the accident and 10 others were injured. I can't even imagine something like that happening, not knowing if it's part of the ride or if something's actually gone really, really wrong. Imagine being someone who sat next to the dead guy as well. That would ruin Disneyland and just like about everything forever. Whew.
10 is a family who, like many others, decide to book a table at Cinderella's castle for dinner. However, unlike other dinners here, this one had a far from fairy tale ending. During the dinner, the husband announced that his wife of 15 years had been cheating on him. He took their kids and left her right there. And probably with the bill as well. Well, it serves her right in my opinion. Our number 9 is an employee who witnessed something totally horrifying, and this person that they witnessed doesn't deserve of taking care of anything living. Well, this person who wanted to go on rides, they decided, you know what, I'm not gonna let things hold me back. I'm gonna put my objects and I'm gonna put my stuff in a locker so I don't have to worry about it and I can go on rides. I don't have to worry about them. Well, apparently one of the things that this person put in a locker was their dog. First of all, I didn't know you can go to a theme park and take your dog. And secondly, how does this make common sense? How does this make sense at all? Putting a dog into a locker without any air. I mean, when you go back at the end of the day to pick up your dog because you were too busy ignoring your responsibilities, when you go pick up your dog, that dog, there's no way it's still alive. Absolutely horrible, and for a staff member to kind of witness that is insane. Taking the number 8 spot today is a grown-up who went to a park dressed as Snow White. And I mean, like, sure, okay, people do dress up as characters all the time at the parks. I mean, it's a thing. Well, except this person got super hammered and pretend like she was the official Snow White, and she started signing autographs, taking pictures, and wreaking havoc at the park. I don't think that I remember Tipsy being one of the 7 dwarfs. This is absolutely horrifying, especially if you're a child and that is your like hero and they're stammering and stumbling and falling over. It's definitely a sight not to see. Coming in number 7 is something that, believe it or not, is a regular occurrence. More than a few times, staff have had to stop people from entering the park because they were caught bringing in human ashes inside of the gates with the intention of spreading them somewhere at the park. They just wanted their loved ones to rest forever at the happiest place on earth, which in theory is sweet, but in seriousness, in reality, it's kind of creepy. Like you're spreading a dead person's ashes on rides or in the water or on the sidewalk. Spreading human remains at an amusement park, I mean, this isn't something recommended. It's something you shouldn't do. Besides, apparently, they just end up getting vacuumed up by staff, so what's the point of sprinkling them on a ride that just gets cleaned up anyways, or sprinkle it on a sidewalk that just gets swept up at the end of the day. Alright, moving right along, number 6. This guest had a super creative, illegal, and dangerous way of expressing their anger to an employee. I don't know what this disagreement was about, but this guest decided that the best way to get their point across was to throw their infant child just at an employee. Imagine getting into an argument, you're getting heated up, and you have your baby in one arm, and you get so upset, you just take your baby and you assault the person with it. I mean, they're your baby. This is your prized possession. You gotta keep them safe. What are you doing losing your freaking mind? You're an adult. You don't take your baby and assault another adult with it. I mean, poor baby. I wonder what happened. I bet you the cops were called. Maybe Troll and Jade was involved in the situation because this seems like this might have happened. You know, this wasn't the first time. Alright, halfway there, and at number 5 is the peak of stupidity. No offense, but apparently multiple guests have asked employees to turn on the AC outside because they thought that all of Disney World was legitimately under a glass dome. Like, this is like the Truman Show. Like, can you turn on the AC and point it outside, please? Because it's pretty hot out here. I mean, it's 35 degrees. Let's make it down. Let's bring it down to 20. Let's bring it down a few notches. We're sweating out here. I'm not sure if that's how it works. I don't know if putting AC outside would work. Unless, you know what if the world turned on AC outside in the summertime? Would that, like, cool the earth? I'm down to try it. I'm down to waste a few grand in hydro bills. Alright, moving on. Number 4, an employee checking over the Space Mountain ride. Well, they found more than they expected. They found an entire glass eye in one of the rockets. As for the person who lost it, I'm not sure how they didn't realize, but then again, if you have a glass eye and it just falls out, I guess the person didn't feel it. What if they're on the ride, they're going so fast and there's so much wind, it popped out and they thought maybe it was just a gust of wind. You can't really see your eye in your eye unless you're passing by a mirror. So I guess maybe I can see how they lost their glass eye. But imagine someone like picking that up. I don't know if, I guess there wouldn't be like blood on it or anything like that, but it's a real glass eye. it would for sure freak me out, and at least it wasn't a real eye. Coming in number 3 is someone else who lost an assistive device. During a ride at the Animal Kingdom, an object was seen flying past customers. Nobody had any idea what it was until after the ride, one of the customers approached an employee and explained that somehow, okay, get this, their prosthetic leg had fallen off during a ride. I mean, okay, maybe an eye can come out. It's just psh, maybe an arm can fall off, but your leg is in the ride, in the seat, like it's on the floor. How does that come out? Unless it's one of those rides where you're sitting and your legs are dangling and it just pops out. It kind of sucks for the person that lost their prosthetic leg, because now they are having an even more tougher time getting around. I hope they found it, and I hope it's okay, because those things sound like it can be very expensive. Nearing the end on this list, number 2 is actually a pretty sad story. One day back in 1973, 2 brothers snuck out and hid on Tom Sawyer's Island after the park had closed. I don't know if people are doing this as like challenges, but you hear about these stories about people staying in theme parks after they close. I mean, it wouldn't be the hardest thing to do. Well, when they tried to swim back, one of the brothers wasn't able to make it, and he ended up drowning. And I mean, it's after hours, everything's closed, there's no one there to save them, no one to hear them scream. His body was found actually the next morning when staff members were getting the park ready to open up. Imagine being an employee, you're like 17 years old or 18 years old, you're opening up a ride and you see like potentially a person floating in the water. I definitely wouldn't approach it. I'd call the authorities or managers to like get that situation situated. Absolutely terrifying, and it would leave me with so many questions. And finishing off today's list, and at number 1, we have, well, if you've ever noticed that the characters always have an escort to walk with them, you know, throughout the park, well, this story is why. Like, you know how you see like Snow White going by and you see like 4 security guards, you see like 4 people around him just to make sure this person's safe? Well, one guest got into a fight with his buddy because he didn't believe that they were people inside of the suits. Like, you must have been so drunk or so drugged up that you thought, like, oh wait, is there someone inside of that suit, or is that a real character? Well, he thought Goofy was actually a giant dog in a hat, and to prove his point, he stabbed Goofy. Goofy was stabbed. I have no defense for this guy. It's complete and utter stupidity at its pinnacle point. Either he knew he was stabbing a person, or he thought he was stabbing a dog. So either way, both situations, not favorable for yourself in society. I'm pretty sure you deserve to be locked up in 4 confined walls at that point, and just spend at least 25 years to think about what you've just done. I mean, you actually thought you were stabbing a dog, like a giant dog in a suit. Makes absolutely no sense. Well, because of that story, and probably because of many other stories that are of violence towards these employees, well, that's the reason why there is security there having to protect them.